A preliminary report by Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane involving a suspicious text message about the Constitutional Court has now revealed more. Last month, Mkhwebane sought to persuade the Western Cape High Court to halt Parliament proceeding with an inquiry into her fitness to hold office, pending the outcome of her rescission application in the ConCourt. She wanted to test the inquiry's rules there. In a text message to an advocate, Ismail Abramjee, a man called Ismail Abramjee, said he had it on very good authority that the Constitutional Court declined to hear the Public Protector's rescission application, and that's before it was released to the public. Mkhwebane revealed yesterday that this was not the only text message he sent, and she says there were 18 calls seemingly between this man Abramjee and Justice Jody, Kollapan, one of the court justices. And she says that, well, speaking to News24, Abramjee denied that there was anything untoward about these calls. Let's discuss now. We're joined by News24 legal journalist Karyn Maughan. Karyn, thank you for being with us as always. Firstly, what can you tell us about Ismail Abramjee, this man who's suddenly in the news?
Well, essentially, Ismail Abramjee claims or describes himself as a legal consultant and commentator. And he says, and has said to me on several occasions, that he's had a long-standing relationship with Justice Kollapan and other judges because of their relationship on what the Pretoria Legacy Foundation, which is an organization based primarily in laudium. And he said that, these calls that occurred between January and just 22nd of April, which of course was 2 days before that text message to Andrew Breitenbach was sent, that started this entire furore. That essentially, all these different calls that were made were in relation to work that was being done by the Pretoria Legacy Foundation, and in no way involved with the Constitutional Court's work or Justice Kollapan's work as a judge before in the Pretoria High Court. What, of course, is unfortunate is that this latest preliminary investigation by Mkhwebane has revealed that in another text message sent to Breitenbach on the 22nd of August 2021, Abramjee in fact referenced the fact that he had a judge friend or a judge colleague had given him certain insight into one of the issues that was pivotal to this case, and that was really the presence of a judge on the initial panel that evaluated whether there was a case for Mkhwebane to meet, which was one of the bases upon which she won her challenge to the impeachment process, the rules of that process in the Western Cape High Court. So, there is a suggestion that he had referenced, this relationship with an unnamed judge previously. And of course, Mkhwebane flagging that in that preliminary report that was released yesterday.
And now the spotlight is firmly on Judge Jody Kollapan. Has he made any statement?
No, Francis, we know that your colleague, Mzwandile Mbeche, in fact, was actually the only person to interview Chief Justice Raymond Zondo in the wake of these revelations, the text message emerging in this litigation in April. And he said at the time, in response to your colleague, that, the court had not made a decision, but that he would be embarking on an investigation into this issue. And subsequently, we have not heard anything in relation to that investigation. It is now several weeks after he began it. My understanding from speaking to people within the Office of the Chief Justice was he was aware of this relationship between Abramjee and Kollapan and was seeking to engage with both him and Judge President Dunstan Mlambo, who had attended an event hosted by Abramjee for Kollapan in March prior to this entire saga playing out. But as yet, we haven't heard anything from the Office of the Chief Justice about the finality of that investigation. And when I spoke to the Judicial Service Commission, they said they had yet to receive a complaint from Mkhwebane in relation to this matter, and therefore would only, was not in a position to really discuss the way forward until they had received that complaint.
And Mr. Abramjee reportedly saying this is all about a party.
Yes, I mean, he said that this was the call in respect of a call that was made by Dunstan and Mlambo to him. That was on the date of the event, and he said Mlambo was asking him for directions. But he said that, much of the phone conversations that he had with Kollapan, I think the longest of which was about 7 minutes. We don't know time frames which call occurred where. Were either in relation to this event or in relation to the work of the Pretoria Legacy Foundation. But as yet, Jody Kollapan has not made any statement. Certainly there was an attempt by the Public Protector's Office to compel him and Dunstan and Mlambo to provide affidavits about the contact that they had with Mr. Abramjee. Of course, the General Counsel of the Bar stepping in and threatening legal action on the basis that it is not within the ambit of the Public Protector's, tasks or especially mandated areas of investigation to investigate the judiciary, and that it is only the Judicial Service Commission that can do that. So up until now, we have yet to hear the version that Abramjee will give in response to these, Kollapan will give in response to these assertions by Abramjee and in response to this evidence of these repeated phone calls.
Yeah. Let's make this very simple. Judges should not be talking about their cases to anyone or about their judgments before they are released. So that's what's at issue here, the conduct of justices on the Constitutional Court. Has Mr. Abramjee explained how he knew about the rescission application? Because that in itself raises serious questions, does it not?
His version of that is that, the rescission application brought by the Public Protector was legally hopeless. I mean, it was widely discussed that, it's extremely unusual for a court to grant a rescission order, but particularly in the circumstances under which she was bringing it, to try and seek to challenge the court's ruling, effectively endorsing all the rules that would be used in the impeachment inquiry process against her. So he says he was just making a comment based on media reports and widespread speculation that she was going to fail in that rescission application. However, what has been focused upon is that he said, he had it on very good authority, number one, and he also predicted that the ruling would be given by that Friday, in which the court was, the Western Cape High Court was essentially dealing with the interdict application. Of course, that didn't happen. We saw Zondo coming out and denying that a decision had been made, but the decision being made a week subsequent to that, on that Friday, and the rescission application being, as predicted, widely, not just by Mr. Abramjee, dismissed. But I think what's come out subsequent to that in relation to these texts that was sent to Breitenbach in August and in November was that Abramjee seems to have been referencing his relationship with a judge who he didn't name as a basis for expertise or for his kind of views on particularly relevant matters in the case. Yes. What's important to remember is that Kollapan did not rule in the Constitutional Court's first judgment in the matter, which was really about this issue of whether or not a judge could serve on this independent panel that evaluated the evidence. But he did sit on the Constitutional Court when it refused the rescission application. And I think that is going to be a potential issue that will need to be evaluated if and when the JSC elects to investigate that, and certainly in the ongoing and as yet unreleased investigation that this Chief Justice Zondo is doing as we speak.
And the Public Protector has left the ball in the court of the Judicial Service Commission and the NPA. Something came to mind very quickly, Karyn. She claimed that the President was conflicted in dealing with her possible suspension because he had been named in her investigations. What about this? She's investigating an SMS relating to a case that she's involved in. Have there been any concerns about her office getting involved and not maybe handing it over initially?
Yes, absolutely. And that was why the General Counsel of the Bar threatened urgent legal action if she persisted in trying to obtain those affidavits from Kollapan and Mlambo. They said very clearly, not only is it that you are not enabled to investigate the judiciary, because obviously the JSC needs to be given that task exclusively because of the kind of role that judges play in our society, because of the fact that they are often targeted. especially if you have an individual who's involved in matters that often end up the courts, and unfortunately for her, routinely finds herself as the recipient of some very scathing evaluations of her bias and lack of honesty. It's simply not appropriate for someone in her position or someone who could be involved in litigation involving the courts to be in a position to investigate them. And that was the argument the GCB made. They said, first of all, the JSC is the only body that can investigate judges. And second of all, you are manifestly conflicted. This is a case that clearly involves your interests, and so it's inappropriate for you to conduct this investigation.
All right,
However,
we'll continue to follow this. Karyn, we have to stop it there. Sorry, just because of time. But really interesting, all the dynamics around this, and now all these myriad of phone calls as well. That was Karyn Maughan, News24 legal journalist.